Welcome back to this series on the principles of power. I'm going to be talking about the fifth principle, the fifth of 8, which is that power doesn't always equate to strength. There's a difference between the two of them. So this is a little bit like the fourth principle, which was that power doesn't always coincide with authority. So, we get power and authority sometimes confused, and similarly, I think we get power and strength sometimes confused. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about how power and strength are not the same thing. Although obviously they are frequently conflated. Think, for example, of a weightlifter. You might talk about the power and the strength of a weightlifter kind of interchangeably almost. But I think even with a weightlifter, a kind of subtle difference applies. He might have the strength to lift the weight, technically, but he doesn't have the power. So on paper, he's got the technical capacity, but on the day, for whatever reason, he's tired, he can't focus, he can't he can't access the power that he needs to lift the weight aloft. So there's a difference there between power and strength. In the kind of psychological domain, which I guess is more what we're talking about today, it's almost the other way around. So power and strength are slightly different, I think. So if you think in particular, I suppose, of the suffragette movement in the early 20th century in the West, you have, I suppose, a group of people, women, who have very little power, and that's why they're campaigning. They're campaigning for the power to vote, or the power to be represented, the power that comes with being represented. So they don't have power by definition, but they have a lot of strength. And the strength comes from a set of convictions, collective will, sense of urgency, vision, and certainly the kind of the flames of injustice, if you will. So I think that's a useful way, perhaps, of illustrating this difference between power and strength. You can have very little power, but you can have a great deal of strength. And I suppose Marx would talk about that too, Karl Marx, in terms of the power of the people. The people, certainly in a kind of capitalist system, may not have very much power, but they have a lot of strength, at least latently, a kind of strength in numbers, if nothing else, that just needs to be organized. So that's the principle. Power and strength aren't always the same thing. And just a final thought on this, I think there is I talked about the suffragettes, I think there is a gender dynamic to this particular principle, in that I think men in particular can fall prey to looking for power when what they lack is strength. This is why I think we end up with quite a lot of weak men in power. They have external power to mask, as it were, a lack of inner strength, which they might otherwise have. But that's this fifth principle, that power does not always equate to strength.